Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us. You guys really wanted us to break down Trump's town hall in Fayetteville, get into the nitty-gritty of his message. So that's exactly what we're going to do.
Not just the what he said, but the how and the why.
Right, like he could have done this town hall anywhere, but they chose Fayetteville, North Carolina, practically next door to Fort Liberty, or as some people still call it, Fort Bragg. What do you think? Oh, was that location just a coincidence?
I don't think so, no. North Carolina's a swing state, remember? And with a huge military and veteran population going right to their backyard. Classic Trump.
And he really played up that champion of the military image, like with John Franklin, the Green Beret, who got kicked out over the vaccine mandates. People were fired up about that.
It's about more than just mandates, though, right? It plays into this deep frustration with authority, the value placed on individual choice. Those themes really resonate with veterans.
It's interesting because then you have Sarah, the VA advocate, who's worried about cuts to community care access. Two totally different people, two totally different issues, but maybe not so different after all.
Good point. You got these two seemingly separate stories that actually feed into a theme we see over and over with Trump. The government, inefficient, maybe even working against you. And Trump, he's there to fight for the little guy.
He's the champion of the individual.
Exactly.
And it's not just talk either. You had that moment with Dwight, the Vietnam vet, who gives Trump his Purple Heart. I mean, you can't script that kind of emotion.
Absolutely. Moments like that, they go beyond policy. It's about that visceral connection Trump builds with his base, something that's hard to capture in the polls and analyses.
It's like he creates a bond that goes beyond logic.
You could say that, yes.
Okay, so we got the military angle, but then he spends a lot of time painting this picture of America going downhill fast under Biden, especially when it comes to the border.
Right, like America's lost its way and he's the only one who can fix it.
Yeah. Like when that woman, Ali, asked about FEMA funds going to migrants instead of hurricane relief. That seemed calculated.
Oh, definitely. He's connecting these seemingly unrelated issues, hurricane relief, immigration, government spending, and it creates this feeling that resources are limited and somebody's always getting a raw deal.
A sense of scarcity.
Exact.
And then he hits him with the stats. 13,099 murderers. Those were his exact words. Entering the country under Biden. I mean, that's a scary thought.
It's important to be careful with numbers like that. We're reporting on what he said, but you always want to think critically. Look for context when a claim seems designed to get that kind of emotional response.
For sure. And speaking of emotional, there's that part about missing migrant children under Biden, 325,000, he claimed. He went off on the media for not covering it more.
Again, he's playing to very deep-seated fears, societal breakdown, government incompetence, children being unsafe. These are powerful narratives.
And then it's almost like he dials it up to an 11, right? World War III. Because Biden's supposedly weak? What's the connection there?
I think it's all connected. It taps into a longing for the way things were, or at least how some people remember them being. A yearning for that Trump-era's stability. It's fear, sure, but it's also nostalgia.
Okay, so we've got appeals to the military, warnings about Biden, lots of doom and gloom. But then he changes it up, right? Positions himself as the answer to it all.
Right, he's not just a complainer, he's a problem solver.
Out comes the drill, baby, drill, tying energy independence to economic relief, like a magic wand.
And remember, this is Fayetteville, a community that has seen its share of economic hardship. Drill, baby, drill.
It's more than just a policy. It's a symbol of American strength, a promise of a brighter future.
It's like he's speaking directly to their struggles.
Absolutely. And it's not just broad strokes either. Remember that question about an Iron Dome for America?
Oh yeah, from that soldier in the crowd.
And Trump jumped on that idea, made sure to mention manufacturing it here in America, even name-dropped North Carolina.
Smart. Appealing to security concerns and local jobs.
Exactly. Nothing is by accident with this guy. It's like every word, every story is meticulously chosen.
It's a well-oiled machine.
Speaking of which, we've got to talk about Laura Trump's closing message. It was a full-on call to action.
The focus on early voting, making the margin too big to rig. They're clearly expecting a tight race in 2024 and want to mobilize that base early.
All right, so let's break it down. We've got the appeals to the military, a narrative of crisis, and Trump as the ultimate savior. What'd you make of it all?
Classic Trump. A blend of showmanship and emotional appeal that's hard to deny. But we're just scratching the surface here.
Right. This is just part one. Stick around, because in our next part, we're going even deeper into the psychology behind all of this, how it works, and why it's so effective. You know, it's amazing how much ground Trump covered in that town hall. And it wasn't just the topics themselves, it was the way he connected them all together. Like he was building something, you know?
It's about tapping into those gut feelings, those deep-seated anxieties people have, and confirming them rather than trying to change anyone's mind. He's really good at that.
Like with that question about FEMA funds going to migrants, it fed right into this idea that resources are limited and someone else is getting what's rightfully theirs.
Exactly. He takes something that has a kernel of truth. FEMA funds are being used to help migrants, and then he connects it to this broader narrative of scarcity, of people being left behind.
And then he throws in those shocking stats, those really attention-grabbing numbers, like the 13,099 murderers. Even if you take it with a grain of salt, it still gets under your skin.
Absolutely. It taps into this primal fear of the other, the outsider, and the chaos they might bring. It's a very old tactic, but Trump uses it effectively.
It's like he positions himself as the voice of those who feel like they've been ignored, forgotten, left behind. Like with the missing migrant children, it's not just a statistic. It's about channeling their fear and anger.
And by saying the media is hiding it, he creates this us versus them dynamic. It's classic Trump. He's the one fighting the system, the lone voice of truth.
Which leads us to, of course, drill, baby, drill. I mean, he brings that line out every chance he gets. But you got to admit, it works.
It does. It's such a simple phrase, but it evokes this strong emotional response. For some people, it represents a return to American strength, energy independence, economic prosperity.
It's nostalgia for a simpler time, maybe a time that didn't really exist, but it's a powerful feeling. And it all ties into what he was saying about World War III. By painting Biden as weak, he creates this sense of imminent danger, like the world's about to fall apart.
Exactly. And who's the only one who can save us? According to him, anyway. It's that classic authoritarian playbook, create a crisis, then swoop in and be the hero.
And it works, because we all want to feel safe. We all want a leader who will protect us. He knows how to push those buttons. You could feel the energy in the room, the way they hung on his every word.
These events are designed to create that energy, that sense of community, of shared purpose. It's very calculated, very effective.
It's an experience.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to analyze not just what he says, but how he says it and the emotional impact it has. Because that's where he excels. He bypasses logic and reason and goes straight for the heartstrings.
And he constantly reinforces this idea that the system's rigged, that he's the victim, questioning the last election, saying the media is lying, warning about voter fraud. It creates an atmosphere of suspicion, of distrust.
Right. It's about delegitimizing any potential loss beforehand. If he wins, it's a victory against all odds. If he loses, well, it was rigged from the start, and his supporters are already primed to believe it.
It's a dangerous game he's playing.
It is, and we need to be aware of it, because whether you support him or not, understanding these tactics, the emotional manipulation, the misinformation, it's crucial in today's world.
Feels like we're living in some kind of political thriller, trying to keep up with all the twists and turns.
In a way, we are. But the more we pay attention, the more we ask questions, the more we engage in critical thinking, the better equipped we are to be informed citizens and active participants in our democracy.
Okay, so we've talked about his use of fear, the nostalgia, this idea of him as both the victim and the savior. But what about his constant focus on the military? It felt like he was using it as a shield almost.
Well, he didn't choose Fayetteville by accident, right? It's right next to Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg. Appealing to the military, especially veterans, is core to his brand.
And it goes beyond just policy positions, right? It's about identity.
Yes. By aligning himself with the military, he's tapping into this idea of strength, patriotism, loyalty. Those are powerful values.
And he knows how to play to that. Like when he talked about changing the name back from Fort Liberty to Fort Bragg, you could feel the energy in the room change.
It was a deliberate move, stirring up that local pride, positioning himself as the defender of tradition against the forces of, well, whatever he wants to call it, woke culture, the radical left.
And it wasn't just symbolic gestures. He also made some pretty big promises, like bringing back manufacturing jobs, drill, baby, drill, stuff that really speaks to people's everyday struggles.
Exactly. He's promising a return to a time when America was a manufacturing powerhouse, a time when jobs were plentiful and the future looked bright.
It's a compelling story, even if it's a bit too simple.
Of course, but that's the point, isn't it? To cut through the noise with simple solutions to complex problems.
Sure, it's effective, but it makes you wonder, what happens when those simple solutions aren't enough? When the problems are too big, too messy, too nuanced for a slogan or a soundbite?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's the question we should all be asking as we watch this all play out.
It's really something else how he takes these complicated issues and boils them down to something so simple, so easy to understand, so emotionally charged.
He's a master at giving people what they want, even if it's a simplified version of reality. And he's really good at tapping into those deep-seated desires.
It's like he's got this greatest hits collection of talking points, and he knows they'll get the crowd going. The border, the economy, national security, it's all there, all filtered through this lens of America's fallen, and he's the only one who can fix it.
It's a potent message, especially when you're the only one with the solution. It creates this now or never feeling, like the stakes are incredibly high and we need to act now, or it'll be too late.
And of course, the solution is always him. But does that kind of message resonate beyond his base? I mean, can you really win an election just by preaching to the choir?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's one thing to energize the people who already support you, but to win a national election, you need to reach those undecided voters, the ones who are still on the fence.
The swing voters, they're the ones who decide everything. So is he even trying to win them over, or is he just hoping to overwhelm the system with his base?
It's a risky strategy if that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked in 2016, but things are different now. The political landscape has shifted. Can he pull it off again?
It's like he's playing a high-stakes poker game, and we're all just watching to see if he has the winning hand.
And we're all playing too, in a way.
Yeah.
Because regardless of who wins, these underlying issues, these anxieties, these fears, they're not going away.
So where does that leave us? We've talked about his messaging, the emotional appeals, the strategic calculations. What's the takeaway? What have we learned?
I think the most important thing is awareness. We need to be aware of how he's trying to persuade us, what tactics he's using, what narratives he's spinning. We need to be aware of our own biases, too, how they might be affecting how we see things.
Like we need some kind of political BS detector.
Exactly. Think critically. Don't just accept everything at face value, especially when it comes wrapped in a neat little package of fear and anger.
Question everything. Do your research. Seek out different perspectives.
Right. Because a healthy democracy depends on engaged, informed citizens. It's not just up to the politicians. It's on all of us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Trump's town hall, we want to leave you with this thought. We spent a lot of time talking about how Trump connects with his supporters, but what does that tell us about them?
What does it say about their fears, their hopes, their worldview? That's something worth thinking about.
Because if we want to understand this new era of politics, we need to understand the forces driving it, the deep-seated anxieties and desires that fuel it.
We need to understand why people believe what they believe, what motivates them, what they're afraid of. If we can do that, maybe, just maybe, we can start to bridge these divides that threaten to tear us apart.
It's a long shot, but hey, we got to try, right? And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all that. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.